Welcome this morning to Running IT in the Cloud. My name is Kirsten Wolberg, and I'm the CIO. So as a CIO, I didn't go to law school, so I don't know all of the legalese behind this, but I do know enough to know that my lawyers have said it's very important for me to point out the safe harbor statement and let everyone in the audience know that you can find a copy of this on our website, or you can very quickly scan it here. And every single presentation you go to, you'll have an opportunity to see this. So maybe you read the first 4 words in this session, the next 4 words in the next session. So today, we're going to talk about running IT in the cloud, because essentially that is the mission that we have and the vision that we have within salesforce.com and the IT department in specific. So I came to Salesforce probably about 18 months ago. And this picture that you see on the screen is a picture that's very real to many people in terms of feeling the financial impacts of the markets over the last couple of years. And I came to cloud computing actually hesitantly. I was not a early adopter by my own admission. Essentially what I looked at, I came to Salesforce from Schwab, and we had gone through everything you could possibly imagine from a turnaround and expense control situation. So I think, how many of you in the audience have been asked to cut your budgets over the last 2 years? Show of hands? Yeah. It's a pretty common phenomenon, and certainly within IT, if you're in the IT function, because that's a place that a lot of people look. So at Schwab, we had offshored probably over 50% of the workforce. We've done a number of rounds of layoffs, rationalized the infrastructure, and cut a lot. Probably 60% of the run rate was asked of us, and we got to about 40%, and I didn't have anywhere else to look, frankly. So that's when a very, very smart person in my organization, this is the reason you hire people who are smarter than you are, a very smart person in my organization said, you know, we really should be looking at SaaS and SaaS products, because this is an additional way for us to save more money, and ultimately it's a better way of doing business. So I started to toe dip within the HRIS space at Schwab using SaaS applications. And that's when I really started to see the religion around the benefits of running your IT shop in the cloud. So I was fortunate to have an opportunity to come to Salesforce, and here I have truly embraced the cloud vision and the vision that we've had since the beginning at Salesforce to really demonstrate that the cloud is a better place for your IT organization. So today, what we're going to do is we're going to organize this conversation in 3 different parts. I was reading a IBM study recently. They interviewed over 2,500 CIOs from around the globe, and they broke it down. I thought this was a really interesting way to break it down when they were looking at those high-growth, successful IT organizations and CIOs. These were the companies who were able to deliver 3 things. First thing that they were able to deliver is really increasing the ROI of IT. So really, for the return on investment for every dollar that's being spent within IT, this is what CIOs and IT organizations are being asked to do. The second is to make innovation real. Everybody talks about innovation, and everybody talks about how they're bringing innovation into the organization, but asking to really quantify and demonstrate how you're making innovation real is something that everyone is being asked to do, but it's very, very difficult to do, particularly when you're in an expense control situation, because you find yourself so focused on cutting costs. And frankly, from an employee engagement perspective, when you've gone through 2 or 3 rounds of layoffs, how engaged are your employees around, hey, let's come up with some new, exciting ideas? Get a lot of presenteeism and challenges like that. So creating innovation, making innovation real within this context is a very, very difficult thing to do. The third thing we're going to talk about is increasing value to the business. ultimately, IT needs to deliver value to the business. How many of you have been in a situation where your business partner sees you as the place that says no? Or my moniker, former moniker, not anymore, thank goodness, my former moniker was, oh, look, it's 1 year and $1 million walking in the door. Because my business partners felt like every time they asked for something, I would say, yes, I can do that for you, and it's going to be $1 million and take me a year to deliver. And even in saying that, they would look at me and think, it's actually going to be $2 million and 3 years to deliver. So, you know, really bringing the value to the business is something that's very, very important. So if you're a CIO or if you're in an IT organization, your ability to deliver these three things, which oftentimes feel very much at odds with one another, that's where you are seen as a true partner with your business partners as well as the executive committee, because you're really delivering value across the board to the company. So I looked at these three things and I realized, as a CIO of Salesforce, I'm able to do this. And I'm able to do it because we have a really incredible toolkit at our fingertips to be able to do this. And that is the combination of force.com as a development platform, agile delivery methodology, which works beautifully with the platform, and we have a lot of tremendous partners who are also creating value and delivering applications in the cloud. So today we're going to give you some real-life examples. How do we do it here? Some people say we eat our own dog food. I like to say we drink our own champagne because I don't eat dog food. So today we want to give you some really practical examples of how we've done each of these things within Salesforce. I want to spend a couple of minutes on this slide. I know it's very difficult to read. Even if you're in the front row, it's probably difficult to read. But this is a slide that I actually use quite a bit when I'm talking to customers. Because the question I get asked most often is, so what do you have in the cloud? What percentage of your applications are in the cloud? What choices are you making around the applications that you're putting in the cloud? So I show this slide to demonstrate that we, in every single domain within IT, are using the cloud to deliver value to our business and to our company and to our customers. So when we look at any time that we are asked to bring new capability into the organization, we have a hierarchy of decision making. The first thing we look at is, can we build it on force.com? Can we utilize functionality or customize functionality within one of the Salesforce applications? Or is there a partner in our ecosystem that has actually already created an application to do this and has built it natively on the force.com platform? So that's the first place we look to see if we can solve the business need there. After that, we will go to other cloud-based providers that have not developed within the salesforce.com cloud. And third, our position of last resort is to look for an on-premise solution. And shh, don't tell Mark, but not every application and not every business need at this point in time can be solved in the cloud or should be solved in the cloud, depending on your business, depending on the situation that you have. But we certainly want to go through those steps and take a look before we do. So when you look on this slide, what you see, red indicates this is functionality that we have within a Salesforce.com product. So these are applications like SFA, Salesforce Automation, that we have within Salesforce.com. If it's blue on this slide, what that indicates is either we have built it within the IT department or one of our partners has built it on force.com. The third is black, and I think it shows up as black there, yeah. Black indicates we have not built this within salesforce.com or on the force.com platform, but it is a cloud-based solution. And so we have a lot of flexibility, and Russ will spend some time talking about how bringing these applications into Salesforce has really enabled us quickly to be able to deliver value for our business partners. I also, when I look at this slide, a lot of people say, wow, how did you decide where to go first, and how did you come up with a slide that looks like this? And if I'm being completely honest, we evolved to this place. This wasn't necessarily at this point a plan that was by design. We just started in November of last year hiring an IT architect to really truly set the design principles that we have, and we have a virtual architecture team that now is truly mapping out the rest of our journey. We're probably about 60% of the way there in terms of on our path to fully run IT in the cloud. Up to this point, it's been opportunistic. As a business partner has a need, we are biased because we're salesforce.coms to create solutions in the cloud. So that bias honestly puts me in a very different position than many of you in the audience. And I recognize that. I'm in a very different position than many people for a couple of reasons. One, because my executive management doesn't ask me, why are you putting it in the cloud? They look at me very sternly and say, why aren't you putting it in the cloud? So I have an executive management team that is very focused on helping me achieve the vision and helping all of the IT organization achieve the vision of running IT in the cloud. The second thing that I have going for me, and oftentimes when I talk to particularly folks that are within the financial services industries where you're in IT of a legacy shop, a bank that's been around for 150 years, or even a manufacturing company who's been around for 30 or 40 years. The degree of the legacy that you have in your environment is very different than the situation that we are in within Salesforce. So the company's 10 years old, and the company has always had a cloud-based bias. But that doesn't mean you can't get to this place, and it doesn't mean that you can't have a vision to run your organization in the cloud. It just means that your path to get there is probably going to be a little bit different than the path that we have taken to get there. So, Schwab is a perfect example. We started within the HRIS space. For some reason, companies seem to think that employees, if you take a risk with employee applications, it is less risky than taking a risk with customer applications. So that's oftentimes a place where companies feel more comfortable starting because it feels like a risk. The beautiful thing that I have realized over the last 3 or 4 years is it's actually far riskier not to be in the cloud and to be on-prem, because I have a lot more resources that I get to bring to bear when I'm looking at a cloud-based solution. So hopefully this slide can give you some ideas of things you can do in the cloud, things that we are doing in the cloud. We're going to try to keep some time at the end to make sure that you have an opportunity to ask specific questions if you have any around these applications. And both Russ and Jeff are going to talk in more detail about some of these. So I'm going to spend just a couple of minutes talking about increasing the IT ROI. I am a finance major by background, so running the numbers and the budgets and the dollars is always a place that I'm very, very passionate about. And so what I looked at is that picture that I just showed you. So that's where we are currently. That represents about 60% of our environment. We still have a number of fairly significant applications that are not cloud-based. So our email, for example, is not currently cloud-based. Our core GL financials are not cloud-based. Our business intelligence tools and our data warehouse are not cloud-based. So I still have some pretty heavyweight applications within the environment. But many, as you saw, of the applications are in the cloud. So if I compared the two and I said, okay, let's just take a look at what would my life look like if everything that I had in the cloud wasn't in the cloud and it was actually still on-premise. So on the left-hand side, what you see is where we are today. So I've got about 240 servers in production servers in my primary database. Database? How did I get 240 servers in my database? It's 7:30 in the morning. That's how. In my data center. Thank you. This is Chuck. This is my fabulous admin. He is the other half of my brain. So, and this is what happens when he's not here on stage with me. So we've got 240 servers in our in our data center. If all the rest of those applications were on-prem, it would be over 700. 700 square feet, 70 kilowatts of power, and we would be over 2,200 square feet and 210 kilowatts of power. One thing, this for me was huge in the sense of 18 months ago when I joined IT, we were pretty much at the ceiling for our power capacity within our primary data center. And looking at that, we were looking at a several $million investment to we didn't have the ability to expand within the facility where we currently were, so we were looking at having to move into a new data center, larger, with a capacity for far more power. We now are at a place we did not have to move because all of our growth, we not only took things out of that primary data center and into the cloud, but every new application that we're bringing on is also in the cloud. So we've actually been able to bring down our power draw within that facility and extend the life of the facility for at least 3 more years. So while from an ROI perspective, looking at that as the cost avoidance of what we would have had to spend, and I can take those $2 million that I would have spent on a data center, which, let's face it, if you're a business partner, the $2 million that I spend on a new data center, what value does that add to you? How does that change your life positively and bring you additional features and functionality? It just doesn't. They just don't care. So that's $2 million, and the return on that is, okay, it's all still running. And while that's important to me, and it's important to them, it's the oxygen. It's not something that they expect to have to pay an incremental $2 million for. So, and also within the headcount space, I've got about 55 full-time equivalents within my app dev and quality engineering organization. It'd be over 150 if I would have had to build all those applications and keep them on-prem. The last piece is around the maintenance component. So maintenance is a huge, huge, huge benefit in the cloud. I have not, in 18 months, I said we were adding 1 to 1.5 new cloud-based applications every single month. Over the 18 months that I've been at Salesforce, we've not added a single person to our application maintenance organization. And I have to tell you, at Schwab, it was definitely every application that we brought into the environment, it was 1, 2, or 3 incremental headcount just to keep that application up and running, minor enhancements, and bug fixes as the case may be. So we have been able to really significantly keep our headcount costs down, and I can take the incremental headcount that I might get and be adding that to more developers, more features, more functionality that we're able to roll out to our business partners. So one of the other ways that I like to look at the return on investment is around, the developer cost in building an application. So Schwab was a Java and .NET shop primarily, so I sort of had that benchmark and those metrics in my head. And in looking at it, a developer within that environment, I would have to bring in all of the capital equipment, the servers, for building the new application. So that, $2,000 to $5,000 on an annual capitalized cost. And then you look at building that application with developers in those environments. It's about, the experience I've had at Salesforce, it's about 1 3/4 developers to every one that's building on force.com. So that's anywhere between a $90,000 and $100,000 cost for the labor in the development of new applications. And last is a line item that I used to have that was huge on my budget, which was around developer productivity tools. So if anybody's in a .NET shop, the VSTS, Virtual Studio Team Server, I think is what that stands for, the developer productivity tools within the .NET environment, depending on what version you're running on, that's a $5,000 to $6,000 cost per developer. And that's before they've coded a single line for each developer you have in your organization. So all in, my cost per developer around building an application used to be somewhere between $100,000 and $120,000 per developer. And then when I look at that cost from a force.com perspective, $75 a month, unlimited platform license, and shh, don't tell anybody, I actually get it for free. It's one of the job bonuses. I don't have to actually pay my Salesforce licenses, but for those of you who do not have the benefit of my position in Salesforce, for about $900 a year. So $120,000 per developer, $900 roughly. So the delta between those two, depending on the cost environment that you're in, you either have those dollars to give back from an expense cutting perspective, or you have those dollars to be investing in something that's adding more value to your business partners over time. So I truly cannot stress enough the investment opportunity, both from a cost avoidance and opportunity cost, and being able to take advantage of many more opportunities within a cloud-based environment versus an on-premise development environment. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jeff. And Jeff is going to talk. Jeff Smith runs worldwide operations for me and for all of Salesforce and all of you who are Salesforce customers. And we'll talk about innovation and how we are making innovation real. And this was a very interesting, and the reason I asked Jeff to join me, because oftentimes people think of operations not as the most innovative place in the world. I will say that our operations organization doesn't have any developers in it. So Jeff has a number of examples of ways that we are bringing innovation, making it very real within an operations environment. Jeff.
Thank you, Kirsten. Good morning. Thank you for attending a very early session. I'm sure that this was challenging, but hopefully it will be valuable to you. So, as Kirsten mentioned, I'm the Senior Director of IT Global Operations for salesforce.com. And today what I'd like to do is describe for you and share with you our story of how we have innovated using, share with you our story of how we've innovated. And my organization is focused primarily on maintenance and service and support. And we do not have a lot of incremental funds or resources to innovate within the organization. So we have to find ways to be creative and squeeze out innovation wherever we possibly can. And the composition of my team includes help desk, traditional desktop support, systems and server management, data center management, network operations, all of the infrastructure functions that you would typically associate with IT. And our situation was the environment was changing very rapidly. Our company was growing very fast, and we were simply falling behind. And we needed to find a way to keep up with the fast growth of the business. And obviously that's a good problem to have, but at the same time it created a lot of pressure on my team. And what we were experiencing was a lot of infrastructure bloat. We were adding servers left and right, and we wanted to be more judicious around how we were building out the environment. We wanted to be more environmentally conscious, and we certainly wanted to embrace our vision as a company to build in the cloud and to use Salesforce technology. The key to our success really has been evolving our environment over time. As Kirsten mentioned, it's been an evolution, and I think it's not been a revolution over time, though you would look at it and from start to finish, and I believe it has been revolutionary in what we've been able to accomplish. But really, the key has been perseverance and iterative innovation. Every opportunity that we've been given to innovate, we've taken the savings and the efficiencies gained from that innovation, and we've reinvested that over and over and over again. And we've recognized business value very rapidly by doing it iteratively and without having to wait for large vendor implementations with long lead times. Obviously, the complexity of dealing with multiple vendors and having multiple vendors try to integrate with each other. We've been able to do it more holistically within a single environment using Salesforce technology. And what I'd like to do is share with you a little bit more about how we've run our IT service management function, our IT service management functions using Salesforce technology and basing it on ITIL principles. So how many of you in the room are embracing ITIL in your shops? Okay, good. So a lot of you have familiarity with ITIL principles, and maybe some of you have already started building out your service knowledge management system. And what I'd like to do is share with you the evolution of our service knowledge management system, building it out in Salesforce technology and in the cloud. So it started really a long time ago with IT service and support. We introduced case management, which is basic functionality. Our whole IT organization uses this to track work. And Ebony, thank you. This is a dashboard that we have posted on the wall on a monitor near our help desk, where it tracks agent productivity. It tracks the top issues of the day. It shows us how we're performing on our monthly objectives, and just gives us a basic snapshot of our help desk. So this is really traditional. Many of you probably are using the incident capability or the case management capability of Salesforce today. We also implemented a problem database, and this captures major incidents. So these are the problems that impact multiple users at any given point in time. And we use this to do root cause analysis, to put corrective action in place, to make sure that we don't encounter major problems over and over and over again. The known error database is really the implementation of our solutions product. And solutions are essentially high-quality, repetitive solutions to repetitive items. All right, then we implemented a custom record type for changes and developed our change database. The change database allows us to control basically what we release into the environment. And this is the tool that we use to run our change advisory board. And this is an example change case. This is an emergency case that just gives you a basic idea of the things that we're trying to capture to try and understand the risk involved with a change, understand who the principals are involved in approving the change and implementing the change. It can also give us information about how we link it to system information and release information, and then it captures comments related to the event. And rounding out our configuration management system is our configuration management database. Many of you would often refer to this as really an asset management system. And while we're endeavoring to build as much as we can in the cloud, we still have, many offices and many PCs and still 240 servers and some network infrastructure that we have to keep track of. And so we have established this asset object, or it's a custom object that we built, which allows us to track these assets throughout the corporation worldwide. And we started out really with just tracking PCs in Americas, and we expanded in Asia and in Europe, and eventually we added the capability to add network devices and parent-child relationships between servers and storage systems. And this now has all of our assets company-wide, and it is our system of record. This allows us to solve the problem of having spreadsheets all over the place, and no one really has a system of truth of where we have assets and who actually is assigned a particular asset or who's responsible for a particular asset. So now we have a system of truth. We have auditing on changes that go on within the system, so that if anybody decides to remove an asset from the environment, we know who did it, and we know who actually decremented the inventory. What we also wanted to do was drive greater accountability into the management teams and into our leadership when making decisions around what to invest in, what projects to work on, and how to manage our budgets that we were given really on a more tactical basis than just getting a monthly, quarterly, annual forecast and saying, okay, work within these parameters. We wanted to, as a management team, be more effective at moving money among ourselves, so that we didn't have to go to the well when one person might need money and another person might have some money that they weren't spending. And we could manage that negotiation and keep track of that using the financial management database. So can you open that up for me? This is an example budget item. It's just a normal expense budget item, and it shows how it's spread over 3 months. And in some cases, the budget might not start until month 2 or month 3, and we can keep track of that here. You can also see how it links to our PO system, our PO process, where we decrement the budget based upon how many POs we open against this budget line. And we can also, if we had a project that this particular expense item or budget line was linked to, we could show the project and link the project in the related list there. Okay. So also, we have a suppliers and contracts database. This allows us to keep track of more than over 500 vendors that Salesforce uses internally. And it also gives us a system of truth for keeping an online copy of our contracts. We have also recently implemented a information security management system which tracks all of our policies. We call it Policyforce. And this system is based upon our content application. And it gives us, obviously, version control. It gives us the ability to normalize the look and feel of all of our policies. And we can get rid of the, I had a policy written, it was in an email, let's go find it, or it's in some Word document on somebody's PC. It gives us that single source of truth for managing policies. Next is the configuration management information system, and that's where we basically can look at capacity across all of our systems and do planning around when we need to do tech refreshes. And then finally, the availability management system, which allows us to calculate availability across different IT service lines and basically do analytics around what systems are having problems and being able to give Kirsten an overall availability number for the quarter. And what I'd like to do briefly is talk to you about how an asset would flow through this in a lifecycle approach. And so what I'd like to do is, using the example of the server that was displayed in the asset management object, I'd like to just say, if we were to hypothetically have a situation where there was a project that required a server, then what would happen is the server project would be initiated through the project and portfolio process. It would come in as a business requirement. We would check to see in the financial management, did we have the funding to support that particular business requirement? We would then source it through an approved supplier in our supplier and contracts database. We would apply the basic security that we are required to by policy on every server based on the policies posted in the information security management system. That would include things like patching levels, access levels, etc. We would then log it in the configuration management database to make sure that we had a record of the asset. Before going live with that asset, we would then initiate a change request. The change request would basically commission the asset, and if, and God forbid, we ever had a problem with the server, we would log a major incident in the problem database, and then we would calculate availability based upon that problem noted in the problem database. So that gives you a basic, holistic view, I think, of how we use this system practically day in and day out. And again, what's beautiful about this, and what is really unique about this, and I think for those of you who have started on your SKMS, there are so many different vendors out there that want to provide point solutions to all of these problems. But what we've been able to do is use our Salesforce platform to do all of it holistically and have seamless integration built in naturally with no integrations written among these different systems. And so I guess what I'd like to close with is we've been able to deliver all of this without any incremental integrations, without any incremental development resources, without buying a single piece of hardware, without adding a single foot of floor space to my data center, and without burning another kilowatt of power. So with that, I'll turn it over to Russ.
Thank you, Jeff. Good morning. My name is Russ Nelson. I'm the VP of IT Business Solutions, and my job is to deliver business value across the global Salesforce. So that's what we want to talk about today, is how we've done it, what are the key factors, and give some practical examples of where we've been successful in delivering business value. So as an engineer, I make an equation out of what we're trying to do. And This is probably a little bit different than the normal IT equation. And what this really focuses on are the true differentiators of business value. So agility, how do we make things quick and timely? Productivity, how do we actually make users productive in doing their jobs and let them focus on the key parts of what their daily activities are? Enablement, how do we plan and enable change as opposed to being a barrier? And lastly, how do we make it all cost effective and reduce the level of effort in the overall equation? So first, agility. Agility is very important to Salesforce for a couple reasons. First is that we are a completely Agile Scrum organization. And Agile Scrum, at its tenet, requires frequent, predictable releases. And without the ability to deliver in a timely manner, we really couldn't be an Agile Scrum organization. And we have definitely seen that when we're working with cloud-based applications versus on-premise applications, the agility and the ability to really follow the principles of Agile Scrum are greatly increased. The second reason that time is the key factor is that time is the true differentiator from a business perspective. At this point, things like functionality, performance, reliability are relatively commodity items from a business perspective, because any IT organization can deliver on that. But time is the one that they really ask about. I would be willing to bet that the vast majority of the questions that I get from our business is when. It's not any of the other areas, it's when and how fast. Yesterday, I attended the Thomson Reuters discussion, and they had, during the acquisition, they had Thomson on Siebel and Reuters on Salesforce, or vice versa. And when they made the decision to go to Salesforce as their global SFA application, and they told the Siebel team that they were going to roll this out globally in 3 months, Siebel team could not believe it. They figured it would be a 2-year effort, and they actually beat the 2-month estimate. So that's a good example of, even outside of Salesforce, of time being so important. So I also want to talk about one of the key factors that allows us to deliver in a very timely manner to our business. And I want to use the example of the App Exchange. The App Exchange is a true unsung hero of delivering business value within Salesforce. So as a brief introduction to App Exchange, if you're not familiar with App Exchange there are over 800 pre-built applications that, for the most part, are able to be run on the Salesforce platform, or at least integrated into the Salesforce platform. And in this example, I've typed a keyword and done a search for chat. And App Exchange has come back with over 20 hits on chat. Some are paid, some are for fee, most are supported, most are native, etc. And the ability to do that, the ability to find something in our ecosystem that solves a business need is very important. Salesforce currently uses over 25 App Exchange applications throughout its ecosystem, and that provides a tremendous benefit in time to market for our applications. So now we searched for chat. And in our case, we had a business need to support our sales organization, our customer support organization via chat. So we searched for chat, and literally a month later, we had gone through the entire process of implementing and deploying a chat service. This is a screenshot that you can see on our corporate website if you hover there, and enables that new sales channel or new support channel in a very timely manner. Without the ability to do the search on App Exchange, find the right vendors, and deploy it in our environments without buying new servers, without going through RFP processes, without that, it would have taken 5 times as long, 10 times as long, and the agility and the goal of IT from a business value perspective would not have been achieved. All right, next thing. So now we have speed, productivity. Productivity obviously is very important for people to get their jobs done in a very efficient manner. And the quicker they can get their jobs done from a system perspective, the more time they have to do their core job, whether it's selling, whether it's working with customers, etc. And the bar is tremendously raised on productivity. Consumers are now used to having an experience in their private lives that makes productivity apps very, very important. Amazon.com, everyone can use it. You didn't have to get trained on it. Just makes your job easier. The side benefit of good productivity is that adoption goes up and training goes down. And that's a very subtle thing in terms of from an IT perspective, but very powerful from a business perspective. So I have a couple stories here on why productivity is such a differentiator in business value. So first, talking about our professional services enterprise implementation. Professional services has a large number of power users, people like resource managers that spend their entire day in an application, as well as casual users, people that come in once a week, once every 2 weeks to do time card entry, expense entry. And at Salesforce, we had a PSA application. But the real barrier to that was the productivity side of it. So we're implementing a platform-based solution on PSA, and the functionality is very, very similar. Not a huge differentiator there. But the true differentiator is around usability and around performance and the fact that we can get much higher adoption with much less training because it's based on the platform and has all the benefits of being a common experience for what they're actually already used to, and they can get their job done a lot quicker. The second example is the time-off manager. Totally different situation. We were in a situation where we had time cards, time-off requests, paper forms, people printed them out, they signed them, handed them to their manager, manager had to turn them into the finance. No one had any idea of their balances, no one had any idea of the schedules, etc. It was a real problem. And from a productivity perspective, we were concerned about time off because people don't do that very often. And we didn't have the luxury of doing a lot of training, but we needed to make a quick transition and have high adoption. So what we did is build it on the platform. It literally took 2 people, a few weeks. We rolled it out globally, and the adoption was tremendous. Here's a screenshot. You can see that you have your ability to enter your time off request. Another benefit of this, we're able to do this all in the mobile environment. Now you can actually submit requests and approve requests on the mobile platform. Let's go to the second screenshot here. And what it also offers is the ability to have complete visibility into your team and their overall request. So you can see that from a very casual user perspective, someone who comes in once a month, once every 2 months, the ability to have a very productive app is a true enabler. All right, third key point. So the one constant in business today is change. Change could come via merger and acquisition, like the Thomson Reuters. Change could come via new leadership. Change could come via economic cycles, as Kirsten talked about earlier. And IT has traditionally been seen as a barrier to change. You know, business wants to go a different direction. IT has to catch up. IT has to do a lot of work to make that happen. But one of the things we found in the cloud is that the cloud actually is a huge enabler of business change because of its fundamental capabilities around configuration and the ability to put the control in the hands of the business. So an example here is the application that you all used when you registered for Dreamforce. The Dreamforce application is built on Sites technology and is built in such a way that the marketing events team has complete control of the application. IT only has to get involved when we want to add new features or new capabilities, but after that, the events team has full flexibility and they can really run the business they need to run. Now, perhaps we've gone a little bit too far and allowing marketing to set up 7:30 in the morning sessions, and we'll look at that next year and figure out how we can maybe put some extra validation on that. But the key point here is that taking IT out of the equation, and putting the power in the hands of the business so that they feel fully enabled is one of the key differentiators and a real driver of business value. All right, last. So we've talked a lot about the what of time, productivity, enablement, business change, but all that is great, but if the level of effort required to make that happen is so high that you can only do a little bit of the top line, then you really haven't accomplished a lot. And the real contributor to business value around level of effort is around minimizing all the unnecessary activities that don't truly add value. Business does not inherently get value out of databases or servers or even code. They get value out of having quick, productive, flexible applications. In this example, we were facing a challenge of delivering on an enterprise-wide performance management application. And this application was going to be used by all users across Salesforce. They were going to manage their annual goals. They were going to track their accomplishment of goals, and then allow managers to do review processes and then workflow of those processes. So here's a screenshot that shows what we were able to deliver in a 3-month time frame with a 5-person team. This is a great screenshot because it shows some of the power of the application and also some of the pieces that don't get a lot of press, like the workflow and the visual nature. On the right side of the screen, you can see the workflow that we had to implement. A 2-tiered workflow that then skipped tiers and allowed workflow to come back. In a 3-month time frame, because we didn't have to worry about procuring servers, what environments we were going to use, all the things that Kirsten talked about in terms of the technology stack, etc., we were able to spend all of our time in those 3 months working with the business people that were the experts on the process, building the application, testing the application, focusing on change management and adoption, and 3 months later we had a successful project. All right, so we've gone over the key equations and why business value can be a true differentiator and how IT can play a key role in that differentiation. We're going to turn it back over to Kirsten for the final wrap-up.
Okay, we'll go on. So essentially, hopefully today you've taken away some tangible examples. We wanted to take the theory out of it and give you some actual examples of how we within Salesforce IT have been able to increase the ROI of IT, truly make innovation real by using Salesforce technologies, and truly deliver value, incremental value to our business partners, and create business partnerships that truly are partnerships. Every time you talk to an IT professional, they're talking about the fact that they really want to be partners with their business partners, but oftentimes that relationship isn't there because the trust isn't there, because the delivery has not been what up to the expectations of the business partners. So within Salesforce IT, we are blessed and privileged to have fantastic business partner relationships, and that's because we deliver value time and time again. So hopefully you've seen that today. You've seen some of the power of the technologies that we've been able to bring to bear and how we are transitioning and moving all of our IT organization into the cloud. We would love to take any questions that you have. There are two mics, I believe. If anyone has any questions, we would be happy to answer them.
Any plan on either releasing some of the internal apps you developed that might be applicable to other companies in terms of how they run some of their back office areas?
That's a really good question. I get asked that question a lot because we've developed some really, really great stuff. And the honest answer is yes, there's a lot of thought about it. The reason we haven't thus far is twofold. One, because the additional work and effort that it would take for us to package those apps up, put them on the App Exchange, and then maintain those apps. When you ask our business partners, they would rather be us spending that capacity to deliver more value internally than to be supporting applications that we're putting on the App Exchange. So that's been, one of the primary reasons. And secondarily is simply because there are fixed resources. We just really don't have the resources in place right now to be able to do it. But even with the Dreamforce registration app, that's one where the marketing organization is saying, hey, this is really, really cool. We probably should be doing something. So we likely in the future will, and would love to hear from folks, and write it in your comment cards if there are particular places where you see gaps that are not being filled by the App Exchange, where you'd love to see some of the things that we've built within IT. I personally would love to be a CIO that can say that I'm a revenue center and not a cost center.
This is for Jeff. You mentioned that you are tracking your equipment, your IT assets in Salesforce, and I was wondering, how did you effectively track, enter all your equipment to start with, and how do you maintain that? We currently have a tool, that will survey our network and log all the equipment and even the aspects of the details of all the software, the RAM, all those configurations. But I didn't know if there was a way that you had to automate kind of collecting that information and maintaining it so that it wasn't a labor-intensive process.
That's a great question. The answer is we haven't automated it, but we had manually entered all of our assets in initially, and then we do batch updates when we acquire new systems or new equipment. We actually have a little handheld device. We developed a little internal application. We receive the equipment in the handheld. We scan it in, and then we upload all the inventory into this little handheld device, and then we batch upload it into the system.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
But that's something that we want to work on and build really into the future, is that linkage between our online monitoring of the system assets and then reconciling that with the actual inventory and the asset object.
We found SpiceWorks, which is open source and is actually very, very effective and convenient, aside from the reporting that's a little bit limited or just general, but you can customize. So, thanks.
Great, thank you.
Hi, I have more of a governance question about the types of controls where, what level of control do you let the business side have to modifications on your Salesforce platform that you're using internally versus what controls IT has with administration and what like a sales organization or someone in the service organization would be able to change on Salesforce, because the platform's fairly easy to modify. So what kind of controls does IT, what do you have in place, and what do you allow people to change, and what do you not allow people to change, basically?
That's a very good question. And the answer, part of the reason I'm pausing is because we've actually pulled back from the business a lot of the changes. When I first came in, there was 127, 128 folks within the business that had admin rights to change. We have pulled that back into about 24, and the majority of those folks are within the IT organization. Jeff talked about the CAB process, so we force changes into production to go through the CAB process, and our business users, they're making changes to things like content. Mm-hmm. They are not making production changes to the features and functionality, primarily because we now have an ecosystem, or we have applications and the integrations between those applications, and our business partners don't have full visibility to the upstream and downstream effects to changes that they're making. This became very real for us on the last day of the quarter when our business partner made a change into production and prevented our order management system from being able to recognize orders. That got everybody's attention really, really quickly, mine in particular, as Mark had me walking into his office every 10 minutes to give him updates on when that was going to be fixed. So, I mean, you certainly have to have the governance within the IT organization, and if you don't have the governance within the IT organization, it's important that you make sure that the business partners truly have the visibility and the understanding of the upstream and downstream applications.
Thank you.
I've got two things. We do have a three-tiered approach to the types of changes that can happen in production. There is definitely a tier that the business owns, and those changes are done essentially on demand. Second tier, and things like pick list changes and things like that. There's a second tier that goes through our app support team, and those are bundled up into a monthly release. And then we have a third tier are those things that really require major level of efforts, code change, Apex, those things, and those also get bundled into more of a monthly or quarter release. Second thing I would say is there actually is a session that I believe it's tomorrow where Randy Edgar and John Beatty from Salesforce actually go through the entire governance process from all the way from the initiation all the way through the SOX and deployment areas.
And it's at 10 o'clock tomorrow.
10 o'clock tomorrow? Okay.
And I'll also put in a plug for there's an architecture section that Yukyun, who is the IT enterprise architect, he is doing tomorrow at 10 o'clock as well, talking about the design principles and the architecture principles that we're using to build out the cloud. Question?
Yeah, it's a two-part question, actually. So you described that the migration of a lot of the IT organization or applications to the cloud happened over a period of time. It wasn't a revolution, it was an evolution, I think you said. So the first part of my question is, which applications were the early adopters, so to speak? And the second part of the question is that you had the advantage of having your company endorse moving a lot of these applications to the cloud, and the challenge that we have as an IT organization normally is not so much that IT wants to do it, it's getting the business to move over. So what was your process to gain business buy-in, and how do you do that continually today? It looks like more than 60% of your applications are already in the cloud.
I'll answer the second question first, and that is, from a business partner perspective, I think our business partners, if you work at Salesforce, you believe in what we are trying to do as a company, which is completely redefine the market space and computing and move everything into the cloud. We believe, all of us, you're not just in IT or technology. So from a business partner perspective, we have a population that truly believes. And when we continually are delivering the value, they're not asking the questions. And from an IT perspective, from an IT leadership perspective, my point of view is the business makes the business decisions, and my team makes the technology decisions. And so we have that level of trust that we are making the technology decisions, and most of the time those technology decisions are made in the cloud. So Russ, in terms of, Russ has been here for about 5 years, so he can tell you what the early adopters were.
Right. So I think actually, we're fairly standard in the adoption process in terms of we started with the core customer service and support, both from an internal help desk IT perspective as well as the customer support side, as well as SFA and the CRM applications. From there, we went two directions. First, we went in the direction of extensions on those core applications. So as an example, on the sales side, extensions focused on sales comp, on extension from opportunities into orders, quotes, contracts, invoices, et cetera, and the entire order management, order to cash area. So extensions on the core. And the second area we really focused on were applications that were used enterprise-wide by casual users. So we talked about things like the time off manager, the performance applications, those enterprise applications that are very, where we have thousands of users, but very casually, very infrequently, we targeted those to be prime extensions on the platform.
Next question.
Yeah, a comment and a question, or I guess a thought is message to your marketing department. One of the greatest things they could ever do is make sure that while you're drinking your own champagne, you're sharing it with us. They should fund your putting these solutions on the App Exchange as the best thing they could do for marketing. And my question is, you talked about these are all the applications you were able to bring to the cloud. You also said there are things that you choose not to. Could you give an example of the type of application you've chosen to, it doesn't really fit in this world, and how do you sell your management on that?
So in terms of things that Salesforce itself has not chosen to build, and a prime example is core HR. We are using a cloud-based solution, so I'm not saying that this is a solution that doesn't belong in the cloud. This is a solution that Salesforce chose not to build, and primarily chose not to build an the core HRIS system because of all of the regulatory, subject matter expertise. We are an IT organization. We are not experts in HR. And so for us to bring in, though Russ knows a ton about it from PeopleSoft, for us to bring in all of the resources that have all of the subject matter expertise to truly be able to build out an HR system, that was an investment that didn't make sense for us to make, particularly when a partner, a cloud partner such as Workday, has the expertise and really the focus in that area. So that's one example. Core Financials is another. Salesforce has just done a joint venture, Financial Force, so we are joint venturing into some of those things, but we are not making choices to build those types of very complex, very regulated, lots of business rules and subject matter expertise. We are not currently choosing to build those things within Salesforce IT. In terms of, what kinds of things not to build on the platform, I get that question a lot as well. And really those things that are very, very heavy computing, over 100 million data elements or things that are really embedded from a data perspective, those are probably not great things for the platform, but transactional workflow, all of those things are great. Forms-based processes are great within the platform. Did that answer your question? All right. Thank you so much for your attention and mostly for getting up out of bed this morning.